Cray Cross Epic, Chapter 1, Hero from Whom? Episode 3, Stoicheia, after 3,000 years. The stone gates were tightly closed, probably to protect the sanctuary, but as soon as Chaos signaled with his hand, they opened. Roa could not help but gasp at the sight that spread out before him. A huge town with canals running in all directions. In the glistening waterways, gondolas rowed by boatmen came and went. Brick houses lined the canals, vividly colored geraniums rustling by the windows. Overwhelmed, Roa stopped on the bridge leading from the sanctuary to the city, and Chaos looked back at him. It's quite something, isn't it? Thury is the next largest city in Stoicheia, after the capital. The World Tree, which took root here 3,000 years ago, showered many blessings on the land. People gathered here, and eventually it became a huge city. The Thury I knew was just some rural district. It's changed so much. It has, without a doubt, been 3,000 years. The streets were crowded, with a multitude of people coming and going. What caught Roa's eye was the diversity of the races. 3,000 years ago, in Zoo, bioroids and dryads were hard at work producing crops in the farmlands. At the center of the Zoogaia continent was the Great Nature University, where the highly intelligent high beasts gather the best of their knowledge. Even within nations, it was a common tendency for only certain races to gather in each region. However, going right past them was a female elven knight wearing white armor and carrying a huge sword. Beyond her was a vampire, dressed like a pirate, walking by leisurely. It was hard to believe that this was the pastoral Thury district of the past. There seems to be so many different kinds of people here. That's because of the fire regalias. The one who stole Chaos's words and said them herself was Radilina, who was walking half a step behind them. Everyone is here in search of the fire regalias. No one knows what it is or where it is, but it must surely be near the World Tree. It's quite hard to get into the sanctuary, but everyone is here to gather information and keep an eye out for it. Looks to be that way. That's why there are so many kids like young Rady going about. Chaos shrugged his shoulders and pouted like a child. This is why there are no end to the number of suspicious individuals trying to infiltrate the temple. As a result, Lita, the captain of the guard, has been running around frantically every day. I can't tell you how many times she's said, "Stop pointlessly wandering around," and has gotten angry at me. You've been wandering around? Well, it's in my nature to want to record everything I can. It's fine. If you want to call me the know-it-all guy, I'll answer absolutely anything you ask me, other than my 3 sizes. But by the way, if you're so curious, Litas are from top to bottom, 90, 58, and 84. Chaos spun his pen around, and only thing Roa could say in return was, So, I know a bit of history. That's right, let's walk and talk about what happened to the world after you fell asleep. That sounds good, let's do that. The book in Chaos's hand glowed, forming an image in the air. After you fell asleep, Gizeh was destroyed, thanks to the power of the 3 heroes, Chronojet, Altmile, and Asha. That Gizeh? Roa's mouth dropped suddenly. The dragon deity of destruction, Gizeh, for those of the general public like Roa, its presence and influence was too great. Although he would hear rumors that the battle against Gizeh was continuing in distant lands, as simple people, we were too busy trying to keep the fire from falling on them. Yes, and at the same time, Messiah disappeared. Messiah? He was rendered speechless by the reality that was conveyed to him in such a convincing manner. It was as if the ground beneath him had fallen out, as if the 2 moons had disappeared, as if something that has been taken for granted had suddenly disappeared. He could not even hope to imagine the consequences thereafter. Seeing his surprise, Chaos nodded. The Messiah was like the sun. It was so obvious that its blessing poured over planet Cray, and the people lived by its power without anyone noticing. And the bad just kept piling on. The presence of Cray's idea, the source of all divinities, could no longer be sensed, the reason being beyond the understanding of us commoners. But now, there was quite a problem. Do you know what would happen? No. All of its divine protection has been lost. Of course, magic could not be used. There were more natural disasters and monsters, and because of the poor harvest, Neo-Nectar's food supply could not keep up, and Cray suffered from starvation. This difficult situation signified the beginning of the Age of Absent Prayers. One could call it a godless era. Chaos's history record displayed the suffering people. Even so, the people continued to live on. Strong and stubborn for the past 3,000 years, the world split into smaller nations, merged, and after much hardship and chaos, the 6 nations were born. The image shifted to show what looked like a world map. However, it was very different from the one Roa knew. The nation borders were different, and what most struck him was the peninsula to the south of Dragon Empire had been gorged out into a circular shape. That's where Gizeh met its end, as its current name, Gizeh End Bay, would imply. You can see how grand an end it was, since it even changed the terrain. Is there anything else you would like to know? Megalonica and Zoo are as one? As expected, young Roa. That's a great point you've brought up. Yes, that's where this Stoicheia is. It is a country founded by the Master Stoicheia, who pursued the truth at the shrunken Great Nature University. They said, "Do not despair, but be grateful, for the divine protection is spreading throughout Cray and accumulating power while it supports us." Then, Zoo and Megalonica came into an agreement and became one big nation. I see. There was so much information that he could only react in that way. Of course, Chaos did not realize this and kept up his pursuit. There was another group of people who arranged with Master Stoicheia. Bermuda Triangle was its yes. You know those legendary divas, don't you? That's right. Those beautiful mermaid divas who are said to make the sound of gunfire disappear on the day of their lives. The girls later left Stoicheia and began to travel the world, accepting all kinds of individuals who wanted to become idols while appearing for peace on the Mobile Academy City, Lyrical Monasterio. This school is a giant white whale that moves through the skies instead of under the sea. Now, pop quiz. With magic unable to be used, do you know where this change had the greatest consequence? It's a simple quiz, my boy. Where was magic particularly well developed? Roa thought for a moment, then quickly came with the answer. Was it Darkstone? Correct! My homeland was a country ruled by Demon King. The demon lords who ruled it were chaotic and belligerent, and together with the disappearance of divine protection, the small nation reverted back into the Warring States period. Eventually, a single hero appeared and managed to bring the demon lords together, and Gear Chronicle gathered there, now known as Dark States. It is thriving. One would say it's a happy ending. Chaos turned the pen nib that had been pointed at the Dark States to the northwest. There was a country that was somewhat smaller than Roa remembered. Next is the country once known as United Sanctuary. This place was hit quite badly, because it had been a country with lots of civil strife. The loss of divine protection caused lots of dissatisfaction, and the decline of the Burton royal family. Furthermore, after consecutive civil wars and monster infestations, the land is at very limits was desolated. Eventually, 6 heroes from 6 different clans of the country came together to create Kita Sanctuary, the heavenly floating islands. But there was the heavens, there is the ground. What was born was a system where those who rule and those who were ruled. The new nation of Kita's sanctuary continues to this day, despite all of these distortions. The united sanctuary that Roa knew of was a country that valued justice and order, with knights who had aspirations and huge corporations that made use of divination. It was so difficult to imagine how it could have become so distorted. On the other hand, there is a country that has not changed, Dragon Empire. The 5 ancient dragons who were able to remain active, even without divine protection, continued to lead their clan and safeguard the continent. Even when the world was facing despair. Why, were they able to maintain such high aspirations? It was because of the temple called the Red Dawn Manor, which guarded the egg of the current divinity, Nirvana. The egg hatched, and the Red Dawn Manor fulfilled the mission it had been given since ancient times. As a result, the climate and harvest on Cray stabilized, and the 3,000-year-long era of darkness came to an end. And as you can see, we are now in the midst of reconstruction. Take it all in, young Roa. This is reconstruction at its finest. With that said, Chaos spread out his arms and pointed to the sky. There were wagons loaded with livestock, vegetable store owners shouting for people to come in, and boatmen rowing gondolas while humming songs. Not even a trace of anxiety was on their faces. They were just desperately trying to make the most of today. So full of life. No matter what kind of world we live in, the people are strong and resilient. And I think that was the same 3,000 years ago as it is today. But this old tale is over. From here on, you will live your own story. Hopefully it will be a fabulous one. Yeah. Roa nodded firmly at Chaos's words. Rady was looking for split ends and Momoke's fur. Chaos slammed his book shut. What do you plan to do now, young Roa? I'm going to look for the one who raised me. Olivia. Even if he's no longer in this world, I just want to know how he met his end. His end. Just saying those words made him feel like the air around his chest was being squeezed tightly. In Roa's mind, Olivia was his partner who had been alive only yesterday. He could not even fully understand that 3,000 years had passed, nevertheless, except that Olivia was dead. Even if there was just a sliver of hope, he wanted to cling to it. Just as he made up his mind, a loud rumbling came from Roa's stomach. He quickly covered his stomach with what remained of his left arm, but it was to no avail. By the way, how much do you have on you, young Roa? About 2 silver coins, I think. Roa was prone to muggings, so Olivia was in charge of their wallet. Did he even have 2 silver coins on him? Chaos nodded. I see, he said loudly, proudly, dependably. You can count on me to help the young Immediately after turning over the inner pockets of his robe, Chaos gave an oh no look. Since I tend to splurge on things quickly, McCartney might have confiscated it all. The sad-looking Chaos was met with an equally sad-looking Roa. For the time being, I guess I'll look for a place to work. That's good, yes. I'd love to take care of you, young Roa, but it's hard for me to be free due to my status as a freeloader in the temple. Just then, a voice echoed straight down the street. Master Chaos! Master Chaos! Where are you? Looking back at the bridge that spanned the street from the temple, they could see a pea-sized figure of a guard calling out Chaos's name. Letting out a voice like that of a frog being crushed, Chaos ducked into the shadow of a fruit stand that was stacked with lemons. Hiding his voice as if he was frightened, he called at Roa and Rady. I've got to, get back soon. Okay, young Rady, I've got an idea. You're going to stay in town for a while, aren't you? After all, you haven't gotten what you've come for. No thanks. I've got a better idea. No! Guards, here's the scoundrel, the ones who infiltrated the sanctuary and escaped, right here. Ugh. While Rady gritted her teeth, Roa could only stand there with a weary smile and nowhere to go. In other words, that's what happened.